Welcome to The Graveyard Shift, the podcast where anything goes, as long as there's a good story to tell. Join Todd, Matt, Jimmy, and Gary as they bust myths and share advice that hopefully isn't terrible. Let's dive in.
Well, hello everyone, and my name is Todd Carlson, and I am the Executive VP of Sales for Directors Investment Group, which includes Passare. So today's episode, we're going to talk a little bit, we're going to have a little fun today. We're going to talk a little bit about funeral service and funeral director misconception. But maybe there's some truth to some of these misperceptions too. So we are going to get into maybe a fun conversation here. And this week, Jimmy, being you've got the Graveyard Shift shirt on, by the way, very stylish. And
Thank you.
You'll be taking complaints.
$19.99 on my website.
All right. So, hey, we haven't negotiated into anyone's deal a merchandise agreement, have we? Or is that?
It's something we collectively did without you, Todd.
Awesome. I can't wait for the coffee mug to come out. All right.
On the way.
Yeah, so let's go ahead and get started. You know, one thing I'm going to, Jimmy, we're going to start with you. You've got the shirt. How can we not start with you when you're wearing it?
I can think of three ways.
Yes.
Let's not get kinky, Bailey.
But hey, you know, Jimmy, as you're growing up, you know, you're from family business. You know, you've been around funeral service since you were out of the womb. And you know, what are those? One of those myths that you hear all the time about our fellow funeral service professionals?
Golly, you must be really rich. That's what you hear. You're like, that's not how this works, right? So,
yeah.
That's one of the bigger misconceptions, you know, because they think, well, you're in a recession-proof business.
Yeah.
And the truth is, unless you take care of people aren't going to call you, because good news travels fast and bad news travels faster. So
yeah, good. Oh, wow. That's a quotable. We should make that a quote on the back of your graveyard.
That's actually trademarked, Todd.
Awesome. Hey, Matt, what do you hear? What did you hear? You know, when you were a young funeral director and you tell all your friends you're going to be a funeral service professional?
That must be really sad all the time. I think people think that we're always just dealing with constant depression. Well, what do you care? Your clients never talk back. Apparently they never met their family before that we actually have to work with and deal with in a lot of circumstances where they think it's got to be easy because people are dead. And I always say to folks, well, imagine the craziest person you've ever met in your life. And now imagine them on the worst day of their life. And that's when we get to work with them. So, you know, those are some things. I love the fact that just the gap between what people think we do and what training's required to do it. So I'll get all the time, you know, well, you do autopsies, right? I'm like, no, I don't. And then they're like, well, you have to go to school for that? And it's like, so let me get this straight. You thought that I don't have to go to school to do this, but that I would be qualified to do pathological work on crime scenes. Like, so there seems to be a disconnect between some of those items as well. So.
Yeah. Oh, that's a good one. So Gary, I know you came from another profession in the world of software and computers and ERP systems and all that fun stuff. So when you were telling your friends and your circles, you know, that you're going to go to work at Spring Grove and run a cemetery, what was that like?
I got mostly shock and disbelief, especially given my sense of humor, that I'd be running a cemetery. And the other thing I got was, well, what are you going to do on Tuesday after you fix it on Monday? Frankly, my biggest misperception about the whole thing was that funeral directors are always serious and dour, and that's been the biggest surprise for me coming from outside the profession, is how much fun funeral directors are once you get them away from their roles at work. They do have to be serious there, but they're a lot of fun to hang around once you get them out of the office. So some of my closest friends in the world, frankly, are in the profession in some way, shape, or form. And these two knuckleheads are Exhibit A and B, Tweedledum and Tweedledee.
Well, which one's which?
Yes.
No, it's really been that was been surprising to me, and the other thing is what Jimmy said, especially with cemeteries, the adoption of cremation has had a very negative effect on the cemetery world, even worse than the funeral home. I can't remember the exact quote, but it's something like cremation to the funeral world's a dire situation, and for cemeteries, it's existential, because our biggest challenge now is getting in front of the customer. When somebody dies, you have to call a funeral home of some kind, but you don't have to make a call to the cemetery, which is not true for burial. So adapting to that and overcoming those financial challenges is significant.
Yeah. Well, yeah, that's all great stuff. The one, you think about some of those misperceptions. I know that kind of got kind of an emotional charge out of a couple of you. What are those misconceptions that are out there that really irk you?
So maybe not a misconception, but it really bothers me when someone uses the word industry versus professional.
Yeah.
Or profession, rather. And that's even within our own profession. You hear knuckleheads say funeral industry, and that bothers me.
Mm-hmm.
It's taken me a long time to weed that word out of my vocabulary, and I still slip every once in a while.
Yeah.
We forgive you.
We use that like a swear jar sometimes around here. It's because you think about it, it's like we're not stamping out widgets, right? We are taking care of people, and this requires training, and it's a service, not a product. So, Matt, does anything come to your mind? Our expert panelist, Matt Bailey from Bailey Family Funeral Homes.
I don't know if it doesn't like keep me up at night, but I think there's the perception that we don't have lives or families or other interests or obligations and responsibilities. I think there's, the mindset of, well, it's 11:18 at night on Sunday, and you must be up against the wall in your coffin waiting for me to call you to have you come and try to pick up a photo from my house to scan it for something. For a pre-need, it just, there are things like that, and people are just like flabbergasted at the idea that maybe there's something else going on, or maybe we are serving another family and you're not the only one. So, it's natural. And I know that I think it's a reflection of just what a good job funeral professionals do taking care of families, because people perceive them as always available and ready and being responsive and good. So in a sense, it's a compliment, but it's also, you have those moments where you're right about to have a family dinner or something, and then something like that comes up.
You don't sleep upside down, Matt, like the rest of us.
No. I don't have the fancy mattress like you do.
Yeah, one of my favorites when I was a brand new funeral director, and it was actually one of the very, very first families I ever served on my internship, and the lady couldn't afford much, and she asked for a payment plan. We put her on. We agreed to a payment plan. She came by once a month on Sunday morning at 8 a.m. to hand me $100. And she knew I lived at the funeral home, and so she'd come to the apartment side of the funeral home, ring the doorbell, and I go, "Oh, Dolores is here again," and so I could totally relate to that, Matt. That brought back some memories. So, one thing we're thinking about here is, not only, we've got, it's a highly personal business, but kind of like, we think we know, like when I would walk down Main Street in the little towns where I was a funeral director, if someone knew me, it was like, they really felt like they knew me because of my work in the funeral home back in the old days. So I was thinking to kind of transition a little bit to, what's your favorite portrayal of a funeral service professional or a funeral director in the movies? Do you have one that stands out for you? Do you remember?
Oh my gosh!
I don't know why I always like Dan Aykroyd and My Girl. Like I just was it Dan Aykroyd? No. Yeah.
Yep.
I just thought
it was.
I don't know. I thought he seemed like a nice guy, played the tuba, World Spice. I don't know. It just seemed like a classic Undertaker kind of guy. I think he, and like a good guy. Like he wasn't portrayed as the one trying to take advantage of someone. I think it did show him as, by living upstairs, having a life and things like that. So, and I will say the same thing. Like I honestly like the show 6 Feet Under. I know a lot of people are like, well, that's not real. It's not, but I thought it humanized us in a way that was really important. And I think it showed, I mean, they were so human in it that I felt like it gave a different perspective to people that work in our space.
Oh yeah. The Godfather. Yeah, the first scene, Amerigo Bonsara was the funeral director / Undertaker that was tasked to repair, put back together the Godfather's son who'd been shot. And it was
Look what they did to my boy.
Forget about it.
Have you guys ever seen Get Low with Robert Duvall and Bill Murray? No. So the premise there, I think Bill Murray plays does he play the funeral director? I think he does, but this Tennessee kind of guy, backcountry guy, wants to have his funeral while he's still alive and invite his friends to it. And it's a great movie. And it's actually the funeral director. And there's a big, huge scene where he's coming to prearrange his funeral. And it's that one's worth seeing, but it's kind of funny because I think, there's a lot of times funeral directors get portrayed, a little bit on that dark side, lack of sense of humor, or like if you see on a TV sitcom, they have a funeral scene. How is the funeral director portrayed?
You ever see Bernie with Jack Black? Bernie with Jack Black. It's a comedy. I thought that was pretty funny. That's worth watching.
Yeah, what about the kind of a funeral service? Not really a funeral service portrayal or funeral director portrayal, but Weekend at Bernie's. You think about Bernie? Remember that one in the '80s? I walked out of that movie. I was in mortuary school, and
I still like the water skiing scene where he hits the booty
in this party for a whole weekend. Oh man. But at least it was interesting. So so one question I've got for you guys is how do you when someone has a misperception, like someone comes in and says, well, I hear the hair keeps growing and you have to shave them because the hair keeps growing after death or whatever how do you guys handle it when families
the hair, the nails,
have a real
you hear
big misperception and then
double down on the misconception and really make them believe that it's
so
oh yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, often do you see ghosts or feel spirits when you're in the funeral home? Those are
I think the biggest problem is nurses and EMTs because everyone I talk to, that's where they get their lies from or their misconceptions. Like, well, my buddy used to work at the hospital and he used to bring the bodies to the morgue and they would sit up. And it was like, then your buddy did a really bad job because he should have brought them back to the floor to have the nurse check them out again because that's not how it happens.
He wasn't ready.
So I just kind of smile and say, that's not true. That's not accurate. Those are myths, but it is remarkable how in 2025, they're still floating around out there that people are still sharing it and believing it.
Yep.
Everybody's got a joke about, what you do professionally. And sometimes it's just it's not because you don't know who's standing next to you. Do they just have a profound loss? I think we've all been called digger before. Or
my family
some
other digger.
some other term, Dermot. And
the weird thing is they started doing that with Gary at Harvard.
Stuff.
Yeah, well,
and I think just being sensitive to your surroundings is a big part of it. I've had folks do that at Rotary Club, and the person next to me, I just buried his wife. So being cognizant.
I think that's the biggest thing to know is like time and place too. Like you have to be able to understand your time and your place. And some people have that skill set and some might struggle with it. But I think I'm pretty good at reading people. And I've had arrangements with families where they've been laughing the entire time. And I have had others where you don't even crack a smile necessarily. I mean, there's nothing light about the experience, and it's also where you are, how you're functioning, how you're talking to people, and what they, who they want to interact with them. So.
Yeah. So Gary, your family calls you Digger, and
yeah, my father does all the time because of the old character Digger Odell. From I guess that's the 50s. It goes way back. My parents are both nearly 90, so their grasp of vaudeville and black and white TV is a lot stronger than mine.
Yeah, there's people right now going to the internet to figure out who that is. So
yeah, I had to look it up.
One thing around here, we are contemporary and up to speed with modern society. So where do you think these preconceived? You talked about the notion of some of these ideas coming from the paraprofessionals that work around us. They see glimpses of it, where else do you think these ideas come from?
Imagination. I think just like people don't want to talk about death, they don't give a lot of thought about who we are and what we do. So I think they just make presumptions and then run with them.
Yeah, what goes on back there?
Yeah, and then it turns into a big game of telephone where they're, people telling the story and they embellish it every time they tell it. We've got a monument from a guy that was an optometrist, and they put glass eyes in the monument in the face. And the common misperception is, the eyes follow you as you walk back and forth across it. They don't. But everybody asks about that when they come to Spring Grove. Oh, I got to go see the thing where the eyes move. Yeah, they don't move.
I see what you did there.
Yeah, so it's funny. We're doing some construction around here this year, and we had a part of the building where we're building a real tall chimney. And rumors spread in the community that we were building a gigantic crematory.
I started that.
Our construction workers coming in and going start sharing with the community.
I joined the
app because I know you. I saw you in your hard hat, in your.
I joined the Abilene in the News Facebook group, and I started spreading rumors.
So it's very effective. Yeah. So we had to debunk the myth that we were building a giant crematory here.
I heard a giant crematory and water park. Is that true?
Yes, exactly. So can you think of a perception where there might be rooted in a little bit of truth?
Wow.
When my kids were young, I always showed up to every event in a suit. So it was the mystique of, well, what does he do? What does he do? And
yeah,
it was, when I was a kid, my dad would drop us off at school in one day in a limousine and a beat up flower van the next day. So it kept everybody wondering what the hell does that family do?
I asked my daughter Maddie, I was dropping her off at school, and I knew we were going to be talking about this today. And I was like, what's a stereotype is true and what's this not? And the one that's not, she said that you're all dead inside, which I don't even know what that meant. But I was glad to hear she doesn't think I'm dead inside. But the other one, she was that like, you're always working and busy and on call. And I don't know if that is a public perception or if it's just the perception of an Undertaker's kid, but that was her, her feedback.
Yeah, we talk about that a lot. That's a whole different episode about the families of a funeral professional, right? They often are second just because, we react to other people's emergency. So, yeah.
Yeah, you're right. I think that would be a fun one to explore when we have a little more time together. But one thing I just wanted to throw out there is that, we've been all three of us, I can't even count today. 4 of us been around the block a little bit and been around for a little while. How do you think there's been a change in perception amongst funeral professionals over the years?
I would say it's probably community by community in certain ways, in different places. Like I think there were places where the funeral director was a prominent person in every community, and I think they were someone that people looked up to and that they trusted. And I think in some places, and I think a lot of us here try to live our lives in such a way that we hope some of that maintains through community involvement, through personal relationships, through giving back, through being present. And fundamentally by the way we take care of families. So, but I think there are other places where it's somewhat different. I mean, the way that people get involved is different. Ethnic clubs, fraternal groups, community activism, houses of worship, all those things have different roles in the community, and the local funeral director was probably part of every single one of them, back in the day. And it's changing. So I think as society changes, we're changing as well, or at least how we're being perceived changes as well.
I was going to say the other element that I think has shifted, that I think is bringing more of the personality of funeral directors out in the current world as opposed to before. When you have a world where it's 90% massive Christian burial and there's not a lot of variability in it, the funeral directors, the guy over in the corner, grabbing the wall with both hands, and not as actively involved in planning. Now they really are event planners, and you get more of the personality, more of the creativity. So I think you get a broader view of what the funeral director's role and who they are as a person, as opposed to 30 years ago, when funerals were more oriented toward organized religion and a little bit more repetitive is not the right word, structured. There was a structure to a lot of funerals.
Yeah, that's good feedback. I was thinking about in my early in my career, having this family members just be fascinated that I would choose funeral service as a career. And that always led to great conversation, and really giving them a chance to ask questions, and then to debunk those myths, because I didn't come from a family of funeral service people. I actually went to college to be an engineer, and then I left college a funeral director, and so that was always a great conversation. And I usually got like one of two responses. Still do if I'm on an airplane today. If I want a quiet ride on an airplane, I tell someone that I'm in funeral service and I have a life insurance license, and that usually shuts them down. If I want a quiet ride, but sometimes though, when you say I'm a funeral director, it's like either people go ew, or they go, wow, tell me about that.
That's normally how that goes.
Yep.
I have questions. My favorite is, I have a really weird question. I'm like, no, you don't. But go, let's hear it. I've heard them all. If it's weird, then I'll get really excited about it.
Do any of you have a story of a engagement like that you want to share?
Oh my gosh! I think we've all been on that initial transfer, and you're in the living room because the priest or someone's in the bedroom with a decedent giving last rites, and there's always that person in there going, "I've got a weird question for you, funeral director," and so it's like, this is maybe not the time to ask me. Like, I watched 6 Feet Under, and is that real? Is that really how it is?
I've had dozens of interactions like that, and what I found is that once people start talking about it, they really do have a lot of questions. They're afraid to broach the topic. But especially if I can relate to them a funny story that's associated with the cemetery or whatever, then they'll start asking, well, I've been meaning to ask somebody, how does this work, or how does the crematory work, or all those. They are curious, but they're afraid to broach the topic. So if you can break through that wall, then you can actually have an interesting conversation. And most of them are lighthearted. Most of them, they're even laughing about the fact that they're interested in what we're talking about.
Exactly.
I think that's a community outreach all of its own. You meet the folks where they are, and ask the funeral director, and you have a couple of questions in the queue that you've heard over the years. And we talked about doing that at a pub once. Like, hey, let's do ask the funeral director at a pub. And just these misconceptions, because people are curious about it, because we're, quote, behind a black veil that no one can see behind, when the truth is we have an open door policy from our funeral home to our crematory. Come on by, we'll give you a tour. And we want to do away with the myth of what's going on behind.
I've seen it, because we do these community outreach seminars and events where it'll be on the funeral of Abraham Lincoln, or it'll be on the burial places of the presidents, the history of grave robbing, and medical schools and stuff like that. And then you get to the end and you ask, anyone have any questions? And the questions are never about the presentation. It's never like, what do they dress President Lincoln in his coffin? It's how much is a funeral? Where, when you cremate a person, are they dressed? Do they have to be embalmed? I mean, or the crazy stuff too sometimes will come out. But, people, I think sometimes they show up to those things because they know the funeral director is going to be there and it's their chance to do that. And that's, why that's part of why, the way people look at us differently now with services changing. And if you only have 3 people come in to make arrangements for a direct cremation and they're not interacting with their funeral director, they have a different perception of us than if you have 200 people showing up for a service and they see you, 15, 20 times a year for different funerals they go to. And, I think, it's maybe not the best comparison, but in some ways, funeral directors are like members of Congress, where, people think of the institution as a whole and say, I don't like it, but they keep voting for their same one over and over again. I think people they may think, well, I don't know about this whole funeral thing. I don't know if it's important or necessary. I don't value it, but I love Lenny from down the street who runs, whatever and Sons. And he's always been a great guy. I don't know if you ever saw the show 4 Seasons. I think it's on Netflix, but I'm not going to ruin it. But towards the end, they have an interaction with the funeral home, and Tina Fey's character is like super suspicious about the bill and how they have to redo it. And the husband goes off and he's like, oh, Marty's a great guy. And he goes, it turns out we actually need all that stuff. And I think that's how a lot of people are. The more they get to meet their local funeral director, I think the better it is for funeral service.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, the one question we get asked a lot is, where does Matt Bailey get his hair done? That is, in and day out, the number one question.
I cut my own with a Flowbee.
I knew that. I was just
outing
you.
And a Popeil pocket fisherman.
Yes.
They're part of my daily routine.
A pocket something.
Yeah. Well, the other element here, Todd, I think is important. We kind of touched on it, is the consumer, when it comes to our profession, is fundamentally ignorant, because nobody, not stupid, but ignorant. Nobody goes shopping for urns, right? It just doesn't happen. And so when they come to an arrangement conference or they start getting involved in pre-planning, they come at it with the mindset the same I do when I go to get my car repaired. I know I'm going to get screwed because I don't understand how any of this stuff works. And that's Tina Fey's reaction, right? That suspicion is, oh, I know you're trying to charge me for stuff I don't need. Same thing as a repair shop. And the more you can break that wall down and get them to where they understand why the various things have to happen, the less suspicious they'll be. And it's particularly true in our profession because people feel vulnerable because of the emotional state they're in.
Right. Yeah, you have a vulnerable emotional state. You have an infrequent purchase that no one wants to think about until they have to. Right. I mean, those are crazy dynamics when you really think about it. So act natural, Gary.
Oh, I just knocked the glass off my desk. That's what that noise was. You were.
Gary needs another vodka.
Yeah. Well, hey, how do you guys think humor plays into that?
I think first and foremost, humor, sadness, professional. You have to meet the family where they are, and you have to do it at a tone that is consistently professional. When people don't know me professionally and they only know me as Jimmy, and they find out I'm a funeral director, they're blown away. They're like, "Are you serious?" And then same with being the professional funeral director, and then you interact with these folks later on the line, or you're at an event or a party together, and they're like, it's like Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde sometimes. So this group right here is kind of out of this world, crazy and funny, all by themselves. So I think it's part of the mental health process, because when someone calls you in the middle of the night for a sacred trust to take care of their family member, you carry that part of that with you along the way. So being able to offload that in a healthy way is important, and humor is a healthy way to do that if it's appropriate, of course.
And when we talk about how we portray our businesses and ourselves, what's some best advice you might want to give our listeners on how to humanize the funeral director? I mean, how would you approach that in the way that you promote either yourselves or your people in your business?
I think the two big things for me is one, you have nothing more valuable or more sacred than your reputation. So you want to remember that first and foremost, and keep that on top of mind as you are doing everything, everything in your life, because once that's gone, it's gone, especially in the era that we live in now. There's remarkably little forgiveness in our current society if you mess up. That being said, I think people also want to interact with authentic people, and I don't think they want someone who's fake or someone who's put it on a show or someone who's using, just a scripted line that their grandfather told them that's what we say after they pick their casket every time, or that's what we say after they pick their vault every time. I mean, I think you have to be yourself, and I think that authenticity comes through. It shows vulnerability, and I think it's appealing to people. That being said, like, if you're not funny, don't try to be funny. Like, don't feel like you have to, like, know thyself, right? So like if you're just like, my sense of humor doesn't go over well, it's who I am. I'm this way, I'm that way. Again, keep your reputation in mind and be respectful, but be respectfully authentic at the same time.
Mm-hmm. Great advice.
For me, I'm not a frontline person like
Thank
these two guys
God.
are. Yes. Oh, I would be terrible. The only thing I'd be worse at than sales is being a funeral director. And I've said that multiple times. I'm not wired that way.
Don't sell yourself short. You'd be terrible at a lot of things.
Yeah, I could screw up a one-car funeral. For me, more of my interactions are not in an at-need situation, right? They're on the street. There's somebody stopping by. There's somebody going on a tour, something like that. And in that case, humor can help break down those walls. And, having a funny story about what happened 5 years ago or whatever. I've got a couple of them that I use on a regular basis. A, I find them funny, and B, it kind of breaks the ice. But I am hypersensitive to not stray away from being a serious person in an at-need situation if they put me in an arrangement room because it's a family I know, because I will slide into funny. I'm not as good as Matt at reading the room, so I've got a loop in my head going, just listen, be serious, just listen. Yeah, yes, you could make a funny comment off of something they just said, but don't do it. I got to get the Hannibal Lecter mask on when I'm going to the arrangement conference to keep me from flapping my gums. So I try to keep those times short because I know my personality, right? Know thyself, right, Matt?
Yeah.
We did good. We had so many one-liners right there.
Oh yeah. Oh, I'm an easy target, and I bring it on. It's fun.
Still leave Hannibal Lecter on the table for now.
Oh man, if there was, just kind of, if you could have a magic wand, right, and you could wave it, and what's the one thing, Jimmy, that you wish families knew about you or funeral service?
I think just that we do what we do to walk with the families in a compassionate way, that just because of our hour, 2 hour, 3 hour time and arrangement conference, what we're doing and thinking to make their life a little easier on this journey continues way beyond that conference and that time. And that we do genuinely still think about the families we serve, days and weeks later.
Mm-hmm.
It is a heavy burden, truth be told.
Yeah. So Gary, what would you, just in your dealing with your frontline people, what's a misperception you wish didn't exist to make the funeral process more effective?
I would tell you that the thing I would like to change the most is to have the people that are coming into an arrangement conference understand that the funeral director's highest priority is not making money, it's making it meaningful. Mm-hmm. So we're going to suggest a bunch of stuff that we know has been meaningful to other families. May not be a perfect fit for you, but what we're trying to do is to have you walk out of that service that everybody that didn't know the decedent knows that decedent better now, and that the family says, wow, that was really meaningful. I'm glad we did that. That is their highest priority. John Horan has often told me funeral directors work for hugs. That's their highest priority. It's not selling you a more expensive casket or put limousine or whatever revenue opportunities there are. It's, hey, how their first and foremost thought is, how do I make this meaningful? How do I make it as best I can get the family on the road to healing? It's the economics part of it. I mean, you guys know this. There are a lot of funeral directors that are very poor businessmen, or business people, I should say, because they're so driven by doing the right thing. Sometimes they give too much away, right? Of themselves and of the products and services that we provide. So that's the first thing I'd like to change, is the consumer's perception that, oh, what Tina Fey that Matt referred to earlier, they're just trying to screw me out of, they're trying to charge me extra money. No, we're trying to make this meaningful so you walk out with a really good feeling that you did something positive for yourself and for your family.
Excellent. All right, Matt, what are your thoughts to that? What's the one thing you would change about family perception?
Just to clarify, Todd, I do have a magic wand.
Is it in the pipe rack?
I've seen it and it's awkward.
Okay. I think initially what I was going to say was essentially what Jimmy and Gary said, because I think they're spot on, and I think it's right. And I'd love to be able to get the trust that we have with a family as we hug them at the cemetery at the start and we welcome them at the door. Because I think if we had that trust at the beginning, they'd be better served and it would be a better experience. And we obviously have to earn that trust, and that's why we often get it towards the end. Since they've already said it, and since they talked for so long, I was able to think of a second item, which would be, if I could wave the wand, I think it would be to erase from people's minds all the false things they have learned from people that think they're being helpful to them. People who think that less is more, people who think that viewing is hard, people, and it is hard, but who think it's hurtful. People who think it's the only thing they should be worried about is dollars and cents, of trying to save as much as they can, not realizing that everything they take off is less of an experience and less of an opportunity that they have to start healing in a good way. So, I think we have a lot of people in this world who consider themselves experts on the area of death, even though they know almost nothing about the reality of what walking that journey is. So I think for me, it would be if we could erase some of those misconceptions that probably began with Jessica Mitford and probably continue on until today. And I think that would help not only funeral service, but I think it would help society as we would learn to be able to handle loss in a healthy way again.
Awesome. Well, that's a pretty good last word, Matt, to wrap up today's session with. I think I know.
Probably not.
Yeah. Yeah. Jimmy is he's already got his rebuttal working, but no. I think there's a lot of. I appreciate all of your comments about that, because that is part of the task that we face as a profession. Is how do we help people be prepared so we can better help them on their journey. So thanks for sharing that, and thanks for having a sense of humor appropriately about this topic, because it is there are stereotypes out there, and our goal is to be authentic, to be real, and to be of service to families. And I appreciate all of your hearts in doing that. So with that, I just want to thank our listeners for tuning in again on another episode. And again, there's really 3 calls to action for our people. Number 1, get your responses and your feedback to us at TheGraveyardShift at Passare.com. And number 2, I'd like you just to put something that you learned today to use. So hopefully you can get involved in your community, and show your community your authentic, true self and your desire to help. And lastly, don't keep us a secret. We want to grow our listenership and viewership so that we can make the impact on funeral service that we all, I know, strive to make. So with that, everyone, have a great day.
Bye.